Well, welcome again to the Brand Ambassador Series. You know her. If you don't, I don't know what you're doing on the weekend, but this is Heather. And Heather will talk about Glenfiddich and other things. Heather, thanks a lot for being here.
Thanks, Fabian. Love the Brandy Library.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure to be here.
I don't force them to say that, you know?
No.
Well, of course, Glenfiddich is a big name. You've got to tell us
Big
why
name.
it's so big
Okay.
and why we need to revisit Glenfiddich.
That is a great question. Glenfiddich started with William Grant and his 9 children in 1886. William Grant worked actually at the Mortlach distillery and decided, and he set out and said, I'm going to make the best dram in the valley. In 1887, after all that hard work, he gave up his job at Mortlach, gave it all up, pursued his dream to create the best dram in the valley, and the first spirits flowed in 1887. This year we're celebrating 125 years with the Glenfiddich distillery. And why I think we should revisit this is that Glenfiddich is still a family-run company. It is still run by the ancestors of William Grant, who founded the company. It was the first single malt Scotch to come to the United States in 1963. So it pioneered the category, opened up the world of single malt Scotch to the rest of the world when people said that it can't be done, no one's going to drink it. And then since then, we've had the designated status as the most awarded single malt Scotch in the world. So, of course, to me, having people revisit this beautiful and phenomenal and exquisitely tasting brand is a treat for me, because what we're able to enjoy is history, real integrity with the brand, with the product, really beautiful like history behind it, and the flavors, the aroma profile that really give it that status.
Well, then, we've got the 15, the 18, the 21, the 30. What about it?
Well, a lot of people, of course, the Glenfiddich 12 is an iconic bottle of whiskey. Everybody knows that. You can get that in just about every bar in the United States, which is great for me because I know exactly what I'm getting. When I'm in an airport bar, I'll order the Glenfiddich 12, and I know what's in it, I know who made it, and I know what it's going to taste like. As I said, it's a benchmark for a great whiskey. Again, another highly awarded single malt. But what a lot of people don't remember is that, or even know, is that we actually have a really premium, beautiful range of whiskey that I enjoy introducing.
Very rich. Even with this 15, which we would think, well, it's only 3 years over the 12. Why would it be so different? But absolutely different.
It's absolutely different. It's a great question. One of the advantages of having a family-run company is that we also run our own cooperage. And what that means is we can start being really pioneering and innovative with what we do with our whiskeys. And the 15 is a really great example of that. While it is 3 years beyond the 12, we're doing something very different here. We're doing something, we have a Solera system that we use to create this Glenfiddich 15.
Now that's unique.
It's very unique in the industry. And what's unique about it, what we do is we actually model the system of creating this whiskey after the way you create sherry. Okay, so what we do is we use traditionally old bourbon barrels, or barrels that have been seasoned with bourbon, as many whiskey makers might. We also use old sherry barrels that are coming up from Spain, but we imported brand new American oak. So as you know, bourbon makers use brand new American oak, legally by law, to create their bourbon. So we use these 3 types of casks. We tip them into what we call a large Solera vat. Okay, so a huge vat, and we never empty it below 50%. Hence the whole Solera system. So we never bottle it below 50%. We fill it back up. We bottle it. We fill it back up, and a never-ending sort of infinite amount of whiskey in that cask. And what that creates, these 3 different kinds of casks mingling together in a Solera vat after that Solera system, is a very spicy, very rich, very unusual single malt Scotch, which really kind of bursts people's idea of what a 15-year-old should taste like. Do you want to taste them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're like, you made it sound so good. Pour it out.
No, I think the 15 is absolutely glorious for being only a 15 years old.
That's it. It's a tremendous value. And what's really fun, I guess we should drink together.
I think so.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's really fun about the Solera, the 15 Solera Reserve, is that for people who are really, really into bourbon, This has that sort of, there's some bourbon elements in there, that butterscotch, that maple, that sweetness. There's a spice in there that the brand new American oak gives it. Of course, mingling with the traditional casks that come from old bourbon casks and,
Right.
and sherry butts.
But you're saying that if this is a Solera system, there's a very infinite part of whiskey
right.
that's absolutely extremely old then. When was this started?
11 and a half years ago. So it's fairly new in terms of when we talk about, like, the sherry bodegas where you have this, I don't know how many years, 400 in some cases is what I've heard. I don't know if that's a myth or reality. You might know the truth on that.
Well, I don't
But
think we can find out, but some
We
are
can
very,
find
very
out,
old.
Very, very old. And that's the idea. The idea is that what we're going to do, eventually, and I think this brand's going to be around for another 125 years at least, far beyond my lifetime, and this will still be around.
You'll still be alive in 100 years old, in 100 years, that's for sure. You know why?
But cheers to that.
Well, because you're drinking the right stuff.
It's beautiful. What you get is that nice, what I get with the Glenfiddich 15 is a nice sweetness on
Yeah.
the tip of your tongue. You're getting a nice spice and mouthfeel around the whole palate, and a nice, of course, we always look for a good finish.
Great texture, a zesty yet honey-like approach.
Very honey-like.
It's everywhere. Really enjoyable.
I think it's a beautiful one. It's my go-to in the range. Now, here's one interesting thing, Fabio. A lot of people say there's a huge myth out there, and I think a lot of your viewers might think you cannot put ice in a single malt scotch. What I think, now, as you know, right now we're going through a heat wave. It's about 99 degrees in New York City right now, and thank God we're in an air-conditioned room. But on a day like today, if you were to add ice to this Glenfiddich 15, of course, ice condenses flavor, so the molecules are coming closer together rather than expanding, and you get these like beautiful volatile molecules that come out of your glass. What's happening with ice is you condense that. But what you get when you condense it, some of the flavors that happen when you condense ice are really great for a hot day. And in this particular whiskey, when you condense the flavor, what happens is you get a lot more vanillas and a real nice chocolate kind of taste on your palate, which I think is really nice for hot days. So I know a lot of people disagree with me. I absolutely think ice is fabulous in whiskey.
All right. Well,
You heard it here first.
if Heather says so, this is it. But what about the
What did she
distillery itself? What
What did
about
they
the
say?
fermentation? What about the distillation? What's going on at the distillery that makes it, whether it's going to be the 12 or the 21 or the 18 or the 15, what makes it different from the others?
We have large pot stills. So what happens when you have larger, beautiful, big pot stills is some of the nice, fruitier kinds of molecules are distilled up and over into your, and condensed and into your second distillation, and then out, of course, into the spirit save. So we get, one of the qualities of the whole Glenfiddich range we like to look for is that beautiful fruit, especially in the 12 and the 18, which we'll taste, is we're going to get some like pear and apple. We like these beautiful floral, some floral. We're not looking for, we don't malt our barley, of course, like the way the Islay whiskeys do, so you're not getting a lot of peat and smoke. Really what we're looking for when we talk about exploring a Glenfiddich whiskey is how the distillation works together with the wood.
Well, you're saying there's no peat on Glenfiddich.
We should not taste peat on Glenfiddich. What we are looking for now, when you're tasting, and actually really in most Speyside whiskeys, when you're looking for identifying the aroma properties in a Speyside whiskey, I would say it's argued about 60 to 70% of the flavor in a Speyside whiskey is going to come from how you use your wood. The wood molecules are going to interact, or the liquid's going to interact with the wood to create your aroma properties.
But when it comes to wood at Glenfiddich,
Yeah.
then it seems like you've got all kinds
We do.
of barrels, all kind of oak species, different charring levels when you're getting the barrels from the U.S.,
We
different
do
toasting levels, big
Toasting,
barrels,
yeah.
small barrels.
That's right. We use sherry butts coming in from Spain, so they're much larger, of course, than the bourbon barrels that come in from the United States. We do char, and what I like about charring, just to get really technical in terms of flavor
Please.
of wood, what charring does is it actually creates, what it does is take away the sulfur and takes away a lot of those kind of qualities. Some people might say rubber or sulfury qualities in a whiskey. So the use of using 80%, and of course the 12 and the 18 and the 30, 80% bourbon barrels that have been charred, we're going to take away some of that sulfury, rubbery properties that you might get in a whiskey. And then we're going to still have structure with toasted sherry barrels, sherry butts, excuse me. It's going to add that nice raisin and tannic. So that combination of using charred bourbon barrels and then the sherry butts, a good structure, a nice amount of sherry butts is going to give it a good balance, is what I always look for. I love this particular whiskey because I happen to really love the aroma properties that you get from bourbon barrels, which tend to be sweeter, which tend to be nuttier, vanilla, butterscotch, like just beautiful, lush flavors that you get in a bourbon. You can get that in a Glenfiddich while still having structure of sherry.
But if you're about to release an 18-year-old or a 21-year-old, does the whiskey start with the same kind of dressing of wood, and it's only an extra 3 years, or does it
Not
start
always.
differently?
That's a good question. The 12-year-old, our iconic beautiful whiskey is 80% old bourbon barrels and sherry, about 20% old sherry, using old sherry butts. You age that 6 more years and it's the 18, and then you age that 12 and it's the 30. What we did with the 15 and the 21 is get experimental with how we use the wood beyond that. So in this one, as we talked about, we're using the brand new American oak and creating the Solera system to create this whiskey. And the 21, which is also very unusual, we're using old rum casks from Trinidad and Tobago, and we're finishing it after 21 years in a Trinidad and Tobago rum cask. So what you are asking is a good question, and it's a great way to explain to people that when you're asking for a whiskey, it's not always just about age. It's also about identifying what your palate really, really likes. So when your customers come in here, I always would think that, and you guys are great at this, like, what do you like? What do you enjoy? And it's not just about age, it's really about what you're saying, like looking at, is it a linear progression up? It's not. There's other variables that go into making a whiskey, which includes the cask.
And it makes it somewhat a bit more complicated for our friends, sippers, for our customers. But they can get a lot of information online. They can attend many tastings. They can go and visit the distillery.
Yes, there are resources online. There's glenfiddich.com. My Twitter feed is Heather Greene, and I often keep up with where I'm going to be getting into tastings, and I'll let you know how technical we can get into the discovery of whiskey before you come to my tasting.